All right. Oh, sorry, I'm phasing. All right, I'm back. This is the Armchair Historian. What happened to France after Napoleon? Click that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. This is what click. It was like that. It was that fast, that simple, completely free. If you could do that for me, it helps out tremendously. If you'd like to sponsor a video, you can click on the thanks button and donate to the channel, request a video, and then when I do that video, I put your name sponsoring at the top. It's my way of saying thank you. So does anybody know what happened to France? I believe France fell apart. They no longer exist, if I'm correct. So let's see if I'm right.
On the picturesque Ile d'Aix, off the coast of western France, Napoleon Bonaparte spends his final days inside his beloved country. After his defeat at Waterloo, he hoped to escape to the United States. The escape is not to be.
Really? I didn't know that. Was he wanting to flee to the U.S. for safety reasons? Or was he wanting to get there for, to build up a military to go back across? It's interesting. I didn't know that.
Instead, he surrenders to the Royal Navy, which takes him to England and later to St. Helena. As the emperor drifts out of view, his legacy continues to shape France for decades to come. 3 monarchs will try to reconcile their monarchism with the legacies of revolution and empire. Each one of them will fail. No history of France is truly complete without discussing its Napoleonic legacy, and no game of civilization is complete without Napoleon himself.
I love
That's why
civilization.
I'm excited that the sponsor of today's award, Civ's Measure of Protective or Settleboat PSC, will receive per se approached in the description below.
I play Civilization. Which one is that? Oh, I'm just writing away like a dick, aren't I? Okay, 7. So I play Civilization for the old PlayStation 3. I whipped that one out. It's like an arcade version of the PS version, but it's so much fun.
As Napoleon's defeat approached during the War of the Sixth Coalition, the victorious Allies decided to restore the Bourbon dynasty to power. King Louis XVIII, the brother of the executed King Louis XVI, would rule France under a constitutional monarchy. The new king was forced to balance the legacies of both pre- and post-revolutionary France. Louis XVIII was aware of the political situation in France. He realized that France could not return to the absolutist Ancien regime as it had existed before the Revolution. As Napoleon's rule collapsed, the French Senate invited him to the throne on one condition: that he accepted their constitution and rule as a constitutional monarch. However, Louis rejected the constitution and issued his own charter instead. It was very similar to the Senate's constitution, promising many revolutionary ideas like religious tolerance and freedom of the press. However, by issuing his own constitution, Louis made it clear where true power lay in the new French kingdom. The charter was his gift to the people, not the other way around. The king was a product of the Ancien regime. Although he did not understand the new France, he pragmatically sought to find a middle way between the pre-revolutionary order and the newfound liberties. The king kept many high-ranking Napoleonic judges and officials. These men had demonstrated their competence under the empire, and Louis actively maintained the policy of unite, forget, forgive. One of the king's closest advisors declared, "Whoever served Bonaparte in the interest of France has served the king." Additionally, Louis maintained much of the Napoleonic Code, and its administrative reforms provided the monarchy with a powerful means to enforce its will. Many of the politicians who entered the legislature in 1815 were ultra-royalist conservatives who felt a sense of nostalgia for the Ancien regime. The legislature swiftly repealed revolutionary laws, which most notably included the right to divorce, and banned revolutionary symbols like the French tricolor flag. Domestic advisors and foreign representatives persuaded the king that these extreme policies alienated many in France who were still attached to the accomplishments of the revolution. He dissolved the chamber 1 year later and ruled mostly with more moderate royalists, known as the Doctrinaires. King Louis XVIII pursued a moderate course, but he could not fully reconcile the order of the Ancien regime with the legacies of the Revolution and Napoleon. As early as 1814, many in France openly undermined the Bourbons regime as Napoleonic idealization took hold of the country. Although the Bourbon Restoration embraced several revolutionary and Napoleonic changes, it resisted many more. Contrary to the Revolution, the Bourbons limited the franchise to just the wealthiest, richest men, about 1% of the people. A reactionary church propagated the values of royalist traditionalism over revolution as one of the most powerful allies of Bourbon France. The Bourbons systematically aimed to eradicate all memories of the revolutionary and Napoleonic past. They criminalized any verbal or written endorsement of Napoleon, defined the suggestion of altering the succession line to the French throne as a political crime, and imposed strict censorship laws. The government even instituted a national day of mourning to mark the execution of Louis XVI by revolutionaries, as atonement for France's past sins. The Bourbon search for legitimacy was thoroughly undermined by...
For anyone watching this video that doesn't know me or my channel, I am related, that's the word, to King Louis XVI. I mean, I'm fine. My head's still attached, so I'm good.
Napoleon's legacy. After Louis was restored in 1815, France was occupied by the Allies for 3 years. The occupation provoked widespread resentment in French society. A combination of economic frustration, social discontent, and patriotic pride coalesced into the figure of Napoleon. He became the image of a heroic emperor, symbolizing freedom, self-realization, the struggle of the common man, and glory. Whereas to them, the Bourbons symbolized a shameful imposed yoke of royal tyranny, while the former emperor stood for French patriotism, liberty, and even the revolution itself. Napoleon's legend reverberated throughout France. People illegally celebrated Saint Napoleon on August 15th, while they refused to celebrate the royalist holidays. Seditious objects, like images of the revolutionary rosettes, caps, and banners, popped up everywhere. Tricolor flags flew on church towers, a symbol of defiance against the hated royalist clergy. Bizarre rumors popped up about Napoleon's return. In one story, Napoleon's return was heralded by a newborn, who immediately upon birth cried, "Long live the Emperor," 3 times. Songs commemorated the Napoleonic glory days, while many royalist celebrations were interrupted by cries of, "Long live the Emperor." Anti-Bourbon agitation regularly turned violent. In the immediate aftermath of the Bourbon Restoration, hardline monarchists were directly opposed by ardent liberals and Republicans. High-profile assassinations, rebellions, and a foreign war only exacerbated the deep rifts that continued to exist within French society. Violence between royalists and anti-royalists started immediately after Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo. Royalist mobs, furious that the French people had so willingly abandoned King Louis after Napoleon's return, were resolved to purge the French state, who they believed to be traitors. Jacobins, Republicans, Bonapartists, and even Protestants were persecuted. Hundreds lost their lives during mob lynchings in southern France, while prominent Napoleonic generals were assassinated. Although many liberals sought a working compromise that would avoid absolutism, dictatorship, democracy, and anarchism, some were more radical. There was an armed uprising in Grenoble in 1816, a rebellion in Lyon in 1817, and even a failed assassination attempt on the Duke of Wellington, who led the Allied occupation of France. 2 years later, a liberal conspiracy in the army was unveiled. Alongside these revolts, secret societies dedicated to liberalism sprung up all over Europe. The conservative European order grew increasingly paranoid that these liberals were in cahoots with other liberals throughout Europe, and that the liberal network was part of a massive conspiracy to overthrow their order. Bourbon France, alongside the other powers of the Congress of Vienna, paranoidly tried to suppress these tendencies through rigorous surveillance and guilt by association. In 1820, a political event shocked France. The Duc de Berry, the king's cousin, was assassinated by a Bonapartist. Many Napoleonic and liberal agitators celebrated and called for the assassination of the king as well. Politically, however, the assassination had caused a backlash. The liberals were swept out of power and replaced by hardline ultra-royalists. They used the next year to quickly consolidate political control over France, and thanks to political manipulation, they soon controlled all but 17 of the 428 seats in the French legislature. These ultra-royalists presided over an invasion of Spain, known as the Expedition of the 100,000 Sons of St. Louis. France intervened to support the Spanish king, Ferdinand VII, in his struggle against his liberal legislature. Aside from resistance by the Spanish liberals, the government also faced significant domestic opposition. French liberals met the armies at the border, waving the tricolor flag and singing the Marseillaise, urging soldiers not to cross. Poets declared solidarity with the Spanish liberals, and French liberals urged soldiers to mutiny. In the end, however, the conservatives were victorious. After the Battle of Trocadero, Spanish liberalism was crushed, and the ultra-royalists claimed a great propaganda victory for their cause. Nonetheless, their hold over France remained ever strenuous. Louis XVIII died in 1824. His brother, Charles X, succeeded him. In contrast to his brother, Charles did not pursue moderate policies. Rather, his contempt for French liberalism and the legacy of the Revolution and Napoleon led to a political crisis and, ultimately, a second French Revolution. Already well before his coronation, Charles maintained a clear ultra agenda. Together with his prime minister, Joseph du Villela, Charles' policies pushed a series of reforms that seemingly brought France back to the days of the Ancien Regime.
I was just about to ask if he was trying to turn back the clock on, a king ruling instead of the power to the people. Which sounds like, yeah.
Suffrage was further restricted to only the ultra-royalists. The émigrés, people who fled the country during the Revolution, received financial compensation for the trouble the Revolution caused them. Many saw these people as traitors to France for their opposition to the Revolution. The French bourgeoisie denounced the law as a bounty to the emigrants for their treason to the Revolution. The greatest social opposition to Charles' regime stemmed from his religious policies. Throughout the 1820s, the church gained enormous influence. In schools and universities, liberal and Enlightenment thought was banned in favor of conservative Catholic education. In 1825, a law that made blasphemy and sacrilege punishable by death further riled public sentiment against Charles, and even sent some ultra-conservatives reeled from the law's severity. Thanks to concerted liberal efforts, Villela lost the 1827 election, and the French legislature was no longer monopolized by the ultra-royalists. The liberals were increasingly fearful of Charles' uncompromised hatred of the revolution, and of attempts to undermine the rights of Parliament. These fears were justified when Charles appointed a new ministry led by an ultra-royalist, the Prince du Polignac. In response, a majority of deputies quickly passed a motion of no confidence in Polignac. The liberals wanted to force Charles to choose ministers acceptable to them, and elections in July of 1830 made it clear that the electorate shared their view. Charles, however, saw the liberal threat as a prelude to revolution. He quickly invoked emergency powers and issued a series of ordinances that suspended freedom of the press, further limited the vote, and dissolved the legislature.
You're trying to appease a very small sliver of people. And stuff like this, you're effectively separating yourself and those ultra rich. You're pulling them all out. You're distancing all of them so everyone can look and say, "Oh, those are the people now we should hate." Yeah, you can't do this, man. King Louis XVI helped the American Revolution, and there were proclamations that were issued to the Americans that led to a revolution that France helped with. Doesn't he see the irony in this? You had a revolution, and now you're doing something that caused a country you helped. Yeah.
Although the 1830 revolution was also caused by economic and financial upheaval, the social reverberations of the 1789 revolution and Napoleon were instrumental in the political crisis. To many liberals, Charles had abandoned the Constitution, and with it, legal government. The revolutionaries were driven by patriotic, Republican, Napoleonic, and anti-clerical sentiments, all directed against Charles X and his out-of-touch policies. The king had forced a confrontation between the legacy of the Ancien Regime and that of the Constitution, with its revolutionary elements. Within just 3 days, the Constitution achieved a resounding victory. After Charles abdicated, the liberals in the French Parliament proclaimed his cousin, Louis Philippe, the new king of the French. Although the new king came to power by riding on a wave of liberalism, he too would ultimately also fail to reconcile his monarchism with the legacy of revolution and empire. At first, the new monarchy seemed to represent the final victory of the people over the Ancien Regime, a champion of constitutional liberty at home and abroad. Louis Philippe, the so-called citizen king, sought to consolidate the legacy of the Ancien Regime, the Revolution, and the Napoleonic era into one patriotic French history. For the new king, French history should inspire pride and unity in its people rather than division. The wonders of the Revolution and the Empire were on full display in the Palace of Versailles, now turned into a popular museum. After months of negotiation with Britain, Napoleon's ashes returned to France, where they were meant to serve as a unifying symbol of French greatness under the stable rule of the House of Orléans. However, the legacy of the Revolution and Napoleon also continued to inspire opposition to Louis Philippe's rule. As 1848 approached, Republican desires, rooted in 1789, once more flared up. Poor urban workers complained about their living conditions, and the petite bourgeoisie demanded an expansion to the still very narrowly restricted right to vote. Ultimately, these underlying tensions exploded in yet another revolution, one that would lead to the creation of a second republic, one in which another Napoleon would rise to power in a popular landslide, in large part thanks to the sentiments of national pride, power, and public order that the Bonaparte name came to carry. I'm excited to announce.
Interesting. Sorry, let me go back.
On the.
Well, that's pretty interesting. I didn't know any. I mean, I don't really follow, France or stuff like that, but I didn't realize they had so many. 1789, 1830, and then 1848 again. And I knew there was a Napoleon that came to power because during the Civil War, France was trying to take over Mexico. And there was a Napoleon there. Or a Napoleon was in charge in France, and then was it Maximilian's? I don't remember. Nothing to do with this video, so I apologize. Okay. This is interesting. I'm still blown away about him wanting to come to America. That I didn't know anything about that. That's really interesting. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed. We're going to end it here. If you know anything more about that, please share. But until next time, have a good day. Have a good night.